Week 5 was a tough one from an injury perspective with guys like Russell Wilson going down initially. Then we had Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, guys who were playing well, guys we root for, getting hurt. And that stinks from a DFS perspective, stinks from a human perspective more than anything else. But we got to talk about the things for today to break down the implications of them, but also some fun things too. Kadarius Toney, not just going off, but also trying to throw a punch, which was kind of cool, honestly. We got that going for us. Some nice efficiency out of Najee Harris. The Steelers offense looking, somewhat competent. Jamar Chase being a monster. Mike Williams being absurd. Cordarrelle Patterson role change. Lot to break down. We're going to do that all for today and let you know what it means for DFS and take a quick look at week number 6. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, week 5 is in the books. Pretty big bummer from an injury perspective. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I could be better. Of course, at least my ankle doesn't look like Saquon's ankle. I don't need surgery on my finger because but I can't watch injuries, but I saw Russ's finger and Saquon's ankle. So
they kept re-showing both of them.
Yeah.
And I'm very squeamish. I have a long track record of avoiding this stuff. I couldn't do with either, and I am upset about it.
Yeah. It's part of covering the NFL, so I'm fully aware of that, and it's good to be cognizant of these things. Although I'm already hyper aware of what these guys go through, I don't want to see it. On a more DFS note, it just feels extra bad to want to stack the Giants and Cowboys game and have that go awry right away, but then for it also to total 64 points and just be like, it could have been good, but unfortunately lots of injuries there.
And then initially in the week, I was pretty into the Chargers-Browns game. I talked myself out because I'm like, Brandon Staley's defense is playing really well. That might prevent the Browns from being a good run back. They might just run the ball a lot and drain clock. And instead, it's the best game of the year. So I think that for me, before we get into the headlines, I think that's my biggest takeaway is don't overthink defense. I think that the recipe is to stack tight games if the total is not low. And I might have gotten a bit too in my head about that, the way those defenses were playing. So I think that for me, I want to make sure I am continuing to emphasize finding games with the potential for a lot of back and forth. But looking forward to week 6, we get the Chargers and the Ravens. Both those defenses are rock solid. I don't care. I think that I want to make sure I'm emphasizing to myself to load up on games like that with the potential to be a Browns Chargers-esque type thing. What about you from a process perspective? Any takeaways for you this week?
Yeah, that was the big miss on both of our parts. Although I will say, even if I had stacked the Browns, it would have flown.
You wouldn't have had David Njoku?
I wouldn't have had Njoku. I probably would have backed off. Like you and I kind of scoffed at Kareem Hunt's salary of $7,000. I tweeted that Cordarrelle Patterson was 4th among flex players since 2016 in PPR points per snap. Hunt was top 24. I feel like that's gonna he might be the new Cordarrelle after this week. But their big performers were Njoku, which I don't think either of us would have gotten to, and then both running backs, and we probably would have narrowed it down to just Nick Chubb. And then
we'll say that Chubb outscored Hunt despite scoring 1 fewer touchdowns. So that's cool at least.
He did.
So I think that was a good situation where not everything is touchdowns, and that's good to know too.
Yeah, that's good. But we would at least myself. I don't want to speak for you. I would have played a lot of Odell. He ended up with three FanDuel points. I'm going to talk about him kind of in passing. He might be toasty, unfortunately. But yeah, the thing that I'm kicking myself for now is we went over a trend whenever the Cowboys played the Panthers. And I was talking about how outlier defenses matter, but once you get outside the top 5 or 6, or the teams that are a huge, basically, a standard deviation above the rest of the teams. Outside of that, it doesn't really matter. So that's
Right.
basically where these teams should have landed for me. I should have looked at it a little bit closer. But again, it's tough because I probably would have whiffed on the Browns, and that would have been tough. But I mean, Mike Williams
Right.
scored enough to make up for it.
Right. And I think the thing is, if I had been stacking that game and I'd been committed to it, I would have gotten to combinations of Chubb. I did have, I think, like one. I had but like I would have had more combinations of Nick Chubb, Mike Williams, and then I give myself more. So, other one was don't worry about the Bucks in terms of
pass rate.
Yeah, they don't care. I think the Chiefs are the other team. They're going to be that way going forward, where it does not matter what the situation is. They're probably going to throw.
Mm-hmm.
So my process is to stack games with tight spreads and high totals. It might just be stack all Chiefs / Bucks games because they're going to annihilate people no matter what the situation may be.
Yeah, Tampa Bay was 6th in non-garbage time pass rate. Like they're going to throw the ball. Kansas City now is going to have to throw the ball once there's not a lightning storm and a huge delay too.
Right.
So Arrow's way up on the team that plays in Arrowhead.
We get Chiefs versus Washington next week. That could be kind of fun. Ricky Seals-Jones revenge game. I believe he played for the Chiefs very briefly, so we'll talk about that later on. We'll get to our headliners here in just one second. But first, quick reminder that we do have our Listener League back weekly now. I don't believe the Week 6 contest is up yet, but it should be up later. Go to FanDuel.com/league/Listener League, FanDuel.com/league/Listener League to enter. Once that is up later on this week, $5 entry, 3 entries max. There is no rake. FanDuel.com/league/Listener League to get yourself entered for the Listener League. Also, the FanDuel Sunday Million for Week 6 is posted up on FanDuel. Still $1 million in first place. Entry fee just $5. And again, you can turn $5 into $1 million with the FanDuel Sunday Million. To get a chance at $2.5 million in total prizes, go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's break down the Week 5 headlines here revolving around injuries, specifically to Russell Wilson and to everyone who has ever considered playing for the New York Giants. Starting off with Russell Wilson, he has a mallet finger. He had surgery. He's out for 48 weeks. Geno Smith came in and put a drive together, had a pick at the end. Not really his fault on that pick because Lockett got kind of tangled up there. Geno averaged 0.27 passing net expected points per dropback across 17 dropbacks, 131 yards and a touchdown. Russ had been just okay earlier on, but I think, Geno looked competent, which I think is the biggest takeaway here for me is he at least wasn't lost out there. Looking at the target distribution from Geno, we saw 4 targets for Tyler Lockett, 3 for DK Metcalf and Will Dissly, 2 for Freddie Swain and Alex Collins. Well, no, with Alex Collins, we don't know if Chris Carson will play in week number 6 yet, but the value in that role goes down with no Russell Wilson. So, Brandon, what are your thoughts on the Seahawks offense for the next month with no Russell Wilson?
Yeah, that's a long time to be without Russ, and unfortunately, we didn't get a big enough sample for me to know what they're going to do. Even adjusting for context with Geno in terms of pass rate, pace, probably going to slow things down, which is not good for Seattle. Could be a little bit more run heavy, which I always struggle to some degree still with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I know what the ceilings are. I know we don't care about floor, but their floor is always, if you play DFS, you should never be surprised if DK Metcalf walks away from a great game with 3 targets. I feel like that's the probability of that is kind of even higher now. That's unfortunate. I want to see what the salaries drop down to. Because this happened early enough, the salary to really want to focus on with Seattle.
Yeah, they're facing the Steelers. It's Sunday night, so they're not the main slate, which means we will get more sample. The problem
Geno
is
and Ben prime time. That's.
I mean, I'm excited about half of that. It's not Ben, I'll tell you that. I think that the thing that reassures me a bit is it's not like Chase Daniel or something like that. Like Geno Smith has been in the league for a long time. He's been the Seahawks backup for a long time. We saw him at times be okay with the Jets as well. So I actually have an okay amount of faith here where he can make it not be a disaster. But the problem is to be great for DFS, you need to be more than not a disaster.
Yeah.
I'm glad we'll get one more game of a sample before they're back on a main slate, and I think that's reassuring. But my baseline assumption is that they will be like slightly below average. Like I'll have to put in later today, like my projected passing efficiency for them. They'll be below average for sure with Geno Smith, but I don't think it'll be a dumpster fire there. I don't think.
Yeah, I think the real takeaway for me is I had issues with this offense from a pace and pass rate standpoint with Russ.
Yeah.
Those aren't going to get better with Geno. So, like, Metcalf Lockett will still be on the radar. Let's say that game was on the main slate. I wouldn't really go there just because that matchup wouldn't be appealing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like those. The issues I have are just, they can only get worse.
Yep.
And that's not to say Geno's awful, but
it's because of the way they'll play things.
Yeah.
Correct. I agree. Saquon Barkley got carted off with an ankle injury. Looked like a melon, but it sounds like he'll miss like a week, maybe 2, which is best case scenario, I would think. Daniel Jones left with a concussion. Kenny Golladay ruled out with a knee injury. Kadarius Toney led the team with 13 targets on 24 routes run and was amazing in that volume. Then got ejected for a sick punch. Devontae Booker, with Saquon being out, played 86% of the team snaps. Elijah Penny played 9%. Booker, 16 carries and 4 targets. He had 6 of 12 red zone opportunities for the team, including 2 targets. So, like, it seems like he'll be the lead guy. The question is, what's the effectiveness of this offense? Because with Jones sidelined, Mike Glennon averaged 0.02 passing net expected points per dropback when they were down pretty big. Last year, the Jags, Glennon was at negative 0.04 passing net expected points per dropback. If he does have to start, the reassuring thing is that he'd likely have Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton back, and Kadarius Toney seems like he's a legit player. So the situation around him would not be bad, but it's a pretty big downgrade with how well Daniel Jones is playing. The one good thing I would say for Mike Glennon is when he came in for the Jags last year, remember he was saying, like, I don't know when I'll start again. I'm going to chuck it deep and see what happens. So, like, at least he's going to be D-gaffy, and I think that's okay. But, Brandon, I think this is a rough situation. I'm having a hard time getting a read on Devontae Booker, specifically because I don't know how efficient the offense will be with Mike Glennon. So what's your takeaway on this offense, given the Saquon injury, the Jones injury, but also the emergence of Kadarius Toney?
Yeah, nobody quote me on this, but I would assume that Saquon Barkley is one of the few running backs who actually makes his offense more efficient just because of what he can do.
I would say it's McCaffrey. I would say Saquon. No, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not.
Like
I would say Christian McCaffrey is one guy who definitely does that.
He's at Saquon's at least.
Kamara.
Yeah. But those 3 guys who can like really catch the ball and just kind of make things happen.
Right.
So like that's a weird wrinkle in this. That might be an unpopular take that other running backs don't help their offense, but I do think that in this case, Saquon.
I would also say it's an unpopular take to say that any of them do, but I think I'd agree with you very much. So
nothing.
At least McCaffrey and Kamara very much. Like they improved their team's passing offense, which matters.
I mean, nothing's popular anymore and everything is wrong all the time. But I think that, with Glennon here, they're 10.5-point underdogs next week. It's really hard not to look specifically at next week against the Rams. They should have to pass plenty. I don't know if they're going to score a bunch of points there. So I think this is just obviously it's an overall downgrade. And this might be a spot where the value that opens up isn't quite worth it, even though we're looking at a 10-game main slate next week. So pickings are a little bit slimmer. And very few of these games have a total over 50.
Let me just put in a projection here for Mike Glennon from a passing efficiency perspective. This line seems a lot.
You think it should be closer?
Well, let me check. I don't want to say anything before. Why? See.
I think that's the biggest spread on the main slate thus far.
Okay. So if I put in Glennon, just kidding, it's efficient. I lied. It's a good line. So I think that's kind of the big detriment to like getting super jazzed about Devontae Booker from a DFS perspective. For season long, you want that volume. For DFS, we need upside. It's hard to get upside when you're a 10.5 point dog on a team that might not be super efficient. So how low would Devontae Booker's salary need to be for you to be like seeking him out, I guess?
Around 6,000, I think. Just realistically, I don't think that I could get much past that. Now I know that that's probably egregiously low for the role, but given all the context, and I'm always going to look right at next week and not pretend they're not playing the Rams as 10.5 point underdogs. I'd say around 6,000, maybe 62 if value at running back is rough, which it might be because again it's a 10-game slate.
He's $5,900. Like he did score twice on Sunday, which means that he was getting red zone usage. Let me check to see what the actual red zone usage was for him in that game. He had half the team's red zone chances, so 6 out of 12. It's actually not bad from a red zone perspective. So if you think they'd score, like he can do well, it's just like there is a path to 20 points there. I think that's what justifies at least considering him. But the path, I think the odds of hitting that path are lower than it would be for a better offense, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, like everyone's going to know that. I don't want to look ahead too much at running back salaries, so we'll do a better job of contextualizing that during our salary scroll at the end. But I mean, very well, it might be a rough week for running back. It's obviously the first time we're looking at the slate. So
it's a small slate too, because there are 4 teams on bye. There is a London game. There's Thursday, Sunday night, Monday night. So it's a very small. It's one of the smaller slates we'll have all year.
It's almost like it's a 10-game slate.
Is it a 10-game slate?
I've said that. I think that's the third time I said that.
Oh wow, I don't listen to you.
It's fine.
Oh, it's not fine. I'm fine admitting it. I don't listen to you. It's tough. I think I would need to be pretty crunched at value to get there, but like the floor will be good. I just question the ceiling. What about Kadarius Toney? Because Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton did warm up on Sunday, so I think we can go ahead and assume they'll be back on Sunday. There's also the chance that Joe Judge might punish Kadarius Toney for the punch. It sounds like he was not super pleased about that. So there are some complicating factors here, but the talent is good. I think the good thing for him is that he played well enough where even when Shep is back and Shep plays the slot, Toney does the slot as well, a lot as well. It's going to be hard to keep Toney off the field. So are you open to taking the swipe at Toney in week 5 or week 6, given those uncertain factors, or are you too scared off by those?
It's so early for that because of we don't know for sure if those guys are coming back.
They're going to be back. I can almost guarantee it.
Okay, if they're back, then his salary is $5,300. It's going to go up.
Oh, I thought you said it is. Okay, just kidding.
No, it was.
Okay.
I would have a hard time going much over 6,000 for the uncertainty there, even though the talent was great and the workload was amazing. I can't imagine that sticks if they add 2 more pass catchers. Evan Ingram's back.
No, he's
what?
Not. No,
he's not. He's on the field.
He's on the field physically. It took 2 injuries before the game, 1 during the game, a Saquon Barkley injury during the game, and an ejection before he got volume.
I'm just saying he's out. He's out there.
I don't care. I'm not going to use him ever. Tony's salary for this week is 6,000 exactly. So, I think
I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah, I think that's pretty sweet. I'll take that. That can overcome a lot of the concerns I have around the factors surrounding his situation. Shepard is $6,200. I think that I'd much rather go Toney over Shepard at those respective salaries, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So Giants worth watching this week. Hopefully it is just a 1-week thing for Saquon because he was playing well. Hopefully Damian Jones is okay because that was pretty scary to see. But we'll see how things go there going forward. Let's talk about some more injuries from the week 5 slate. Starting off with Sunday night, Clyde Edwards-Helaire left early Sunday with a knee injury and not really sure how much this opens up either. Darrell Williams played 41% of the snaps. Jerick McKinnon played 32%. So pretty split there. Williams had 2 of 12 red zone chances and McKinnon had none. And that's a trend because no running back on this team has had a single game red zone share higher than 33%. So it opens up snaps in a good offense. We do want to tie our offenses or our players, running backs, to good teams. But the reason you tie them to good teams is because of touchdowns. But if they don't score touchdowns because they don't use them, then does it actually matter? It might be a split backfield between McKinnon and Williams. They don't use their backs and are great for DFS. So how are you viewing Williams if we assume CEH misses time?
Like a good season long pickup, not someone I would go out of my way to target in DFS. I played him in the single game slate, and he had I think 2 like back to back red zone carries and got stuffed at the one. And I was like, he's not scoring.
Yeah.
And then they came out and did this like super quick shovel pass to Travis Kelce. They always just basically line up inside the 5 and act confused, and then just run a trick play. And I never feel like it's going to just be a handoff to a running back. So without
you don't do that window dressing for a handoff.
like, yeah. So like you said, the reason that we would usually love Williams in this offense just doesn't really exist in this offense. So
right. Darrell Williams is $5,200. I think that's low enough where you take like swipes, but at a low exposure level. Because like, again, like if he gets a 60% snap rate on this team, there's a path to a good game there. But I can't get more than like 15 to 20% unless value is crazy bad next week.
Yeah, like that's low enough where I would change my opinion. I was, if I had put him at like 6,000, I'd be like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But 52 is a different story. That'll be a little bit tempting.
And we assume that he's like a 1-2 versus situation versus Jarek versus a 1A 1B.
I would
think that's
so.
where I'm at. Yeah, okay.
Probably a 1-2. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I agree. There, we'll see what the word is on Darrell going into next week. Juju Smith-Schuster was ruled out second half with a shoulder injury, and it sounds like it's pretty serious. Pittsburgh's second half target numbers with Juju out. We got 3 for Chase Claypool and Najee Harris, 2 for Ray McLeod. I always want to say Ray J. McLeod. I know that's not his name, but 1 for Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, and Cody White. We had 1 downfield target for Claypool, 1 for Ray J. McLeod, and 1 for White. So Juju's a good player. It stinks to lose him. With that said, I feel like the bigger pieces to lose in this offense would be the downfield threats. Mm-hmm. So I think having Deontay and Claypool still healthy means that they can stay afloat. I'm going to put the Najee Harris discussion in here as well, too, because I think that is pertinent to this one, because Najee Harris actually had an interesting role, or he had interesting efficiency, I guess I would say, on Sunday. He was cramping, so his snap ran down a bit, but he had 142 yards from scrimmage. The past 4 games, he's at 81, 142, 91, 142. That's much better efficiency than he had the first game. He had 6 of 7 red zone chances, and he's been a huge force in the red zone for a while now. So I feel like even with Juju being out, I'm feeling better about this offense now than I was before. What's your thoughts on the Steelers if we assume that Juju misses some time here?
Yeah. We talk often about losing key pieces, opening up volume, but hurting the offense. I like Juju as a person, but I like you said, the bigger issue would be losing someone like Claypool or Deontay. So
it's not an anti-Juju thing. It's the way he's used is not super valuable.
Yeah. So it's not going to downgrade me too much. I'm always going to have a hard time playing Steelers because of how Ben Roethlisberger looks.
Yeah.
He's always shaking something out, always getting dinged up. Although he's done that his whole career. I grew up watching plenty of Steelers games, and guy likes to make a meal out of anything. But more importantly, his passing efficiency is just like to the level of the defenses he's played. There's not a whole lot of like leverage. He's got a below average ADOT. Like
I will say though that his efficiency being to the level that he's played is better than perception.
Yes, that's true, but it's also not been particularly worthwhile.
Yeah, true.
So I think the arrow's up on Najee.
Agreed.
For sure, because he couldn't have been much less efficient. That's probably also a big miss on my part because he wasn't he was like always going to score eventually.
Mhm.
I didn't think this was really the game for it because you and I didn't like this game. They were
I thought the
super slow.
Broncos defense was going to dominate him.
Yeah, that super slow pace projection, but I think Arrow's up on Najee, and I'm not gonna. This isn't a spot where I'm like bailing on the offense because Juju's out.
Right.
I'm also not particularly in on it because of Ben anyway.
Where are you at with Deontay versus Claypool? Because, it does open up some stuff in this offense. If we look at the 3 games that Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool played together. Now, Juju played in 2.5 of these, but Deontay led with 25% of the overall targets. Claypool had 21%. Claypool had the edge and deep targets. He had 3 per game, whereas Deontay's at 2 per game. I think they're both good. Like I can definitely tolerate both them. And I think that getting an overall bump is positive. So I actually have pretty positive sentiment around both those guys right now. They're not the main slate next week, but like I have a decently positive sentiment around both those guys right now. If we assume Juju misses time, what about you?
Yeah, overall positive. I would go with Claypool just
Okay, yeah.
because of the leverage on his targets makes for a similar or better workload than Deontay. I know that the raw targets will almost always favor Deontay, but
Yeah.
adjusted for leverage, things like air yards and downfield targets and red zone targets, it's about equal. And I always, Claypool's got that massive upside that can really hurt you.
Yeah, he's also just fun to watch. I think they're pretty even for me. I wouldn't actually pick one. I know if I had to pick one, I just don't. I think they're very even.
Yeah.
So,
And then talking to me about Najee, just like in the context of running back.
so like this is a stupid phrase to say, but they looked good running the football against a very good defense. So I thought that was pretty encouraging. Where maybe like this offensive line had a lot of turnover from last year. They were bringing in some new guys. That's not a bad thing given how bad they were. Maybe it took them 5 or so weeks to gel and figure out where their strengths were in running the football. So I think that to me, he was $7,300 last week. I feel like he deserves to be 8,000 ish or so. Like that's kind of where I'd view him because he has the workload of a 10,000 type back, but you have to discount a lot for the offense. So I think I'm pretty good with him right now. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, we were in on him. Boy, it feels like a long time ago at this
I
point
know.
where we locked him in week 2. But we played him early on. Then we got away from him because the efficiency was bad. Probably bad process in hindsight because the workload was always there. And efficiency at running back comes and goes. Obviously, it's easier to be efficient in better offenses, but it's hard to predict like game to game things like
Mhm.
yards per carry, which we don't care about as a stat, but yards per carry adds up to fantasy points. So
Yeah.
it was probably silly for me to be low on him because the workload was always there.
Arrow's up in a big way. I feel a lot
Yeah.
better.
Yep.
And I want to be reactive. Like his red zone rolls. I think he has 40 something percent of the team's red zone targets alone, not counting his rush attempts, which is crazy. Final injury to note here. Curtis Samuel left early with a groin injury after just 4 snaps. He was banged up coming in. He was questionable. He didn't practice Wednesday and Thursday. Terry McLaurin, 11 targets. Ricky Seals-Jones had 8. He had 3 in the red zone. DeAndre Carter had 8 targets, 4 of which were deep. Adam Humphries had 5. Ricky Seals-Jones, 99% of the snaps. Pretty good for a tight end.
Could have been better.
So, yeah, could have been better, but he could have been out. Where was that one snap, Ricky? I think that the main takeaway here with Samuel being banged up is that McLaurin he's Terry McLaurin. Like he is what he is. But also RSJ, legit tight end option. They face the Chiefs next week, a game that I am going to stack the poop out of. Name that salary for RSJ and Terry McLaurin next week.
McLaurin, I feel like I haven't played him in a few weeks, so I don't know what his salary's been. I think low 7,000s.
Yeah.
Probably 75.
Uh-huh.
I'd have a hard time. I'd have a hard time if he were close to 8,000 just because of the offense. For Seals-Jones, I think he was 49.
Mm-hmm.
Probably about 53, 54 in that range.
I was going to say 57 just because that you don't get that role very often from a tight end. So I think I'll go 57 for Ricky Seals-Jones. He is
5,000.
5,000. He's going to be a staple at tight end this week, right?
Carry 74.
So they're both
Is that about where you were?
Yeah, I said 75 is correct. I agree
Okay.
with you. And the good thing with RSJ is that when I'm stacking that game, it'll be with Mahomes. If I want to cancel out Mahomes, Tyreek, RSJ at 5,000 helps a lot. The bad thing is I can't stack him with Kelsey. I'm not going to use a tight end in the flex, but like when I'm going Tyreek, makes it a lot easier if my run back option is Ricky Seals-Jones.
Just making a note to play Ricky Seals-Jones.
Welcome to week 6 with buys in the NFL.
Yeah.
RSJ lock button. What could go wrong? Again, it's a revenge game, I'm pretty sure. I think he played for them for a hot second.
Hey, who could say? I mean, we'll never know.
I also forgot that it's Geno Smith revenge month, given that the Jets have the Seahawks first round pick this year. So every game Geno wins makes the Jets first round pick worse. So revenge month for Geno. Not that we need any reason to love Geno, any more reason to love Geno, but bump him up at least 10 points on the spread for Geno in that situation. Let's move now to some role changes here. Based on what we saw in week number 5, Sean McVay said, we got to get Bobby Trees more involved, and they did. Robert Woods, he had 25 targets entering week number 5, and then he had 14 Thursday night. His target share was 19%. It was 40% in that game specifically. 3 downfield targets. He had 7 total through the first 4 games. Do we think this is his new role going forward? Because I don't. But I feel like it was kind of a, here you go. This is to appease you for a bit. We're going to go back to our regular offense eventually. It does help out, and it makes you feel better about using Robert Woods. I know that usage is within his range of outcomes. But I don't think this means he will be like a 30% target share guy going forward. What about you?
No, I don't think that either. I think that it kind of naturally has to downgrade Cooper Kupp a little bit because Kupp, yes, has an amazing red zone role. I still don't feel great about like high-end yardage upside for him generally. So with that, with Van and Deshaun kind of mixing in with some downfield work, it makes me feel better about Matthew Stafford. Just makes me feel a little bit less certain about the stacks here. That said, though, I mean, arrows up on Robert Woods, but not like just going to blindly play him because I'm not buying into a 40% target share, right. Even a 30%, probably even 25% might go back down toward like it was 19 entering, probably about 23-ish moving forward.
Yeah, I think I'm still pretty good with Kupp, actually. I don't want to downgrade him too much. He still had 10 targets in this game. He had 3 downfield targets. He is at whatever 13 divided by 5 is, like 2.5 something deep targets per game the first 5 weeks. That's a really good roll.
I'm at 2.4
too. Okay, yeah. Math's tough.
2 red zone per game.
That's pretty good roll.
Oh, it is, absolutely. I just mean
he's also had more than 90 plus yards in 4 out of 5 games. So I used to be on board with you where I thought the yardage upside is bad. I think that's shifting a bit.
It very well could be, but if we're taking some of those targets, some of the maybe the more downfield stuff, giving them to Woods, maybe some more of the red zone gadget plays instead of just throwing it to a wide open Cooper Kupp in the red zone all the time. Maybe they try to get Bobby Trees like a handoff or a screen. That's about it. But like I'm saying I'm like lower on Kupp, but he's still a full go for me.
Name that salary for Kupp and Woods. They're in a bad game, but like I don't know. Just in general, I guess like let's say neutral matchup. Ignore the matchup.
I can't do that.
I know. Okay, fair enough. I'm not even gonna ask you then.
No,
Kupp is 82.
I was gonna say probably about like 77 for Kupp for me.
I think 82 is appropriate. Am I defending Cooper Kupp?
You are.
Did I get like body swapped? Robert Woods is $6,900. A little high. A little high.
It's nice, but high.
I agree. Okay, so moving on to other role changes. The reason we typically use Aaron Jones is his role in the red zone, and he didn't have that on Sunday. Across the first 4 games, Jones had 49% of the team's red zone chances. It was 53% in the non-bloods, excluding week 1. Then on Sunday, he had just 27%. A.J. Dillon had 3 carries and 2 targets. Jones had just the 3 carries. Jones did still get 109 yards from scrimmage. He played 70% of the snaps. He had 24 adjusted opportunities. So it wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't great. So it definitely got my attention, Brandon. I'll say that. What's your level of concern on Aaron Jones, given that he did lose some red zone work to AJ Dillon this past week?
So this is harder for me to answer than for you, I think, because historically I've struggled with Aaron Jones. Because Jamal Williams was kind of, relevant to some degree, enough to where I didn't consider Aaron Jones like a feature back, like a full feature back, relative to some of the other backs with similar salaries. I'm starting to feel that way again. I don't know if I'm hitting the panic button early on a great player and a good offense. It's very possible. So I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts because, again, I've historically been just afraid of Jones.
I think it depends on what people do with him, because if they eject because AJ Dillon's getting a lot of good usage, then I can still be there, because like 109 yards is good, 24 adjusted opportunities is fine, and he still did have a decent red zone role on a very good team. So I'm definitely downgrading him. I want to make that clear first. I'm definitely downgrading him from where I had him before, but I don't want to cross him off necessarily. And I think that if this gets enough buzz, which I think people will talk about it this week, how much work AJ Dillon's getting, I think there is a chance that we cross off Aaron Jones and don't use him. I don't think that's the appropriate response. I think the appropriate response is to take him from a guy where I was okay with him in tournaments at $8,400. He's not a cash game play there. I was good with him in tournaments at that number because of the red zone roll. If you make that red zone roll more shaky, I think he's a $7,400 type back. And that's probably where I'd be on him. What about you?
Yeah, 74 sounds about right, but he's 8,000, which seems high.
So it depends if people totally cross him off. If they do, I can get there for tournaments. But if people don't realize that the red zone rule is slipping, I'm very okay being underweight on him.
I feel like people will know.
I think they will too. I think people are smart enough to catch on to this. But what?
I'm good. I'm glad that you see that level of, just that you're optimistic and that you call people smart.
Yeah, I mean, I study roster rate percentages. I know people make smart moves. So that's why. It's not because of what I see on Twitter. It's because of studying roster rates. I know people are generally pretty smart. Even with T. Higgins being back in that same game, Jamar Chase had an awesome role. He had 10 targets. 5 of those were deep. Looked great. He had 159 yards and a touchdown. T. Higgins does still lead with 24% of the targets in the 3 games he has played, and Chase is at 23%, but Chase has 77% of the deep target. I think it's 10 to 13 in those 3 games. That's absurd. So how are you viewing Jamar Chase going forward now the Bengals are actually letting Joe Burrow throw the ball?
Yeah, I mean, again, I've used this phrase a lot, but arrow up on Chase. The concern that I had was just what would happen when Higgins came back.
Yeah.
That's not really there. They're forcing him the ball. They're from the stuff I saw in Red Zone. I think you actually had this game, maybe. I don't want to be mistaken, but I think you were watching this game closely. Seems like they were just throwing it to him and see what happened, which is what you want to see. It's like a Cortland Sutton situation from a few years back, kind of back again now for Sutton, but you have to like that. And I was trying to dig into Cincinnati's pass rate, week 5, non-garbage time. They bumped up to 7th.
Okay.
Which is
that's a major deviation.
A large deviation.
That's really good. Mixon was banged up. I don't think that mattered too much for the pass rate, though. I think it's just like they feel more comfortable with Burrow dropping back now than they did before, and they've got the dudes to do it. So I think that's great. They get Detroit next week. I feel like the Jamar Chase is going to be massive chalk in that matchup. So I do still think there is some leeway to use T. Higgins. Chase is very clearly the one. He is the one on this team. Higgins in the 3 games does have a couple touchdowns. He has not exceeded 60 yards, and the deep targets are all going to Chase. So I think that there is a big gap between them, but Higgins is not totally off the radar. What are your thoughts on the non-Chase guys here?
I'd probably honestly be a little bit hesitant myself.
Okay, that's fair.
Like with Chase's role being so good, I mean, are we talking Mixon's back and healthy?
Yeah.
Like, if we're talking that, then I like Mixon plenty, but I don't think I would really get to the other pieces right now,
Yeah.
even on a 10-game slate.
Yeah. The spread's pretty tight in that game. It's 3.5 points. And I actually have that being fair without having yesterday's data in yet. So that game might be okay from a stacking perspective. I think the Bengals defense will probably get a bump from once the numbers from week 5 come in, if I had to guess. Offense might too, but 3.5 is not totally outrageous based on what I've got.
It's a 26-point implied team total. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I think I'm more so like, will Detroit keep pace? But I think that
Sure.
they might do something here. So that's not too bad. Cordarrelle Patterson seems to be getting a more bankable role. He played a season high 59% of the snaps. 23 of those were in the backfield. And that was also season high. And that's important because you could say, okay, no Calvin Ridley, no Russell Gage. That's why he got more work. But also he played the most snaps in the backfield the entire year. He had 14 rushes. That's a season high. 9 targets. That's season high. 114 yards from scrimmage. They're on a bye this week. But what's your view of Cordarrelle Patterson after what I would classify as being a role change on Sunday?
I was kind of hoping that they would, like, I know they played in London, so they're automatically getting the bye. I was hoping that they would be on the main slate because the workload is better, and I have yet to really get to Cordarrelle Patterson, but Calvin Ridley missed that game due to a personal matter, so he's going to be back whenever they come back from bye. The increased snap rate came because he was playing out wide.
No. I just said he played the most snaps in the backfield. He played the entire year.
Yeah, but he also played a lot of snaps. Like he and Mike Davis had a lot of overlap.
Yeah, but he played more in the backfield than he's played the entire year. That's not just a Calvin Ridley thing. That's a role change.
I mean, that's fine, but I think that the rate at which he had been performing was obviously going to he was going to have some regression in terms of what he was doing production wise. I think that the added work he got was related to all of their I won't even say injuries, but missing pieces, and so I'm going to be lower on him than consensus still.
14 carries was season high, double his previous season high.
Okay.
He's had 100 yards in scrimmage in 3 straight games. He had 36% of the team's red zone chances.
Okay.
Like, I don't think...
what salary are you thinking Cordarrelle Patterson was going to be? Maybe that's our disconnect.
73.
Like, I don't really have I don't have a ton of interest in that.
Why not?
An offense I don't like.
Why not?
For a committee back.
He's not a committee back. He's not a running back. He is a weapon. He's like this thing. There's no like precedent for Cordarrelle Patterson because he's getting running back usage with downfield targets or like wide receiver usage with 14 rush attempts. Like there's no comp for that.
I don't like the offense enough.
Okay, fair enough. What would you set for the salary?
No, that's what I'm saying. The disconnect here is I think his salary automatically is going to be
but
much
what would
higher.
You set it at? Hypothetically.
Okay. What I would set it at if I were setting salaries, probably around 73. That's not the same as what I would feel. Like 67.
Boo.
Like give me DeAndre Swift versus Cordarrelle Patterson.
Bring that back up next time they're both in the main slate.
Like Swift was like, that's the thing is Swift's like in the upper 6 range. I would rather have.
Give me that bet next time they're both in the main slate. I might be tempted. Might be tempted.
If it works out for you, then you would take it. But if not,
no, I want to see what the matchups are and stuff like that.
Okay.
But next time they're both in the main slate, let me know, and I actually might take you up on that bet.
Okay.
Damian Williams and Khalil Herbert, pretty even split in the backfield for the Bears. The snaps were even. Damian had 22 adjusted opportunities compared to Herbert's 18. Williams ran routes on 9 of 23 dropbacks. Herbert ran 7. Both guys had 3 of 7 team chances inside the red zone. So it's a split with minimal separation. Brandon, I feel like I don't want to go at Damian Williams or Khalil Herbert right now. What about you?
Yeah, not particularly. This offense is not great. It's going to take me a while. It's going to take a while for me to feel optimistic about this offense. And with a 50-50 split in terms of snaps. That's not really enough. That's if you picked up Damian Williams in season long, you can keep playing him. If you maybe preliminarily added Khalil Herbert, or you're going to try to pick him up this week, sure, but you don't have to play these guys in DFS, and their paths to like 20 points are very limited.
Yeah, Williams is $6,500 next week. Herbert is 55. Like, I don't think either guy's worth targeting at that salary. Like, they get a good matchup with Green Bay in terms of like rushing, and they are running the football a lot. We'll talk about that later on.
Yeah.
But
I'm
it's not enough.
I'm curious for once we go through the salaries, who's around Williams?
Yeah,
Because again, it could turn out that Williams is
Yeah.
one of the only options. But again, in a vacuum, I don't have a whole lot of interest in Damian Williams.
Mhm.
And I want to make that known to myself before I then look at salaries and like projections per salary dollar.
Right.
Be like, oh, I guess I have to love Damian. I didn't love
Yeah.
him before. I don't want to have to love him because of just minimal value.
I agree. Because that's what happened with Chuba Hubbard 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. Kind of an overlook because the Raiders were bad, but Josh Jacobs got a role change. He played 72% of the snaps and had 25 adjusted opportunities. That is the fourth game in his career with a 70% snap rate. He has 5 targets in back-to-back games, something he had done 3 times in his career before this stretch. So the yardage is still bad. He doesn't look good, and that does matter a lot. But is this enough for him to be on your radar, getting targets and staying on the field a bunch?
He had an above average success rate. Underperformed a little bit in terms of expected fantasy points, but it's a good role. And honestly, at this point, we're going to be entering bye territory. We're going to have fewer running backs to pick from. Historically, Josh Jacobs not a back that we target. If this is the Josh Jacobs we're going to get, and we're on a 10-game slate, he is going to be much more in the conversation.
Josh Jacobs or Damian Williams?
Jacobs.
By a wide margin, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Josh Jacobs' salary for next week. Do you want to name it or no? They're playing the Broncos at home or on the road.
73.
68.
Okay.
I think that's about appropriate. I'd be closer to 7,000, I think.
Hey, Josh Jacobs or Cordarrelle Patterson?
Cordarrelle's good at football.
I don't know.
Will Josh Jacobs have 100 yards in scrimmage this year in a game?
Yeah.
Maybe. Elijah Mitchell came back from his shoulder injury and played quite a bit. He played 68% of the snaps, 9 carries and 2 targets. So the usage wasn't good, 62 yards, but it seems like they want him on the field. That's the vibe I've gotten from each time he's played so far this year. So I think it's pretty interesting. They're on bye, but are you buying into Elijah Mitchell post bye? I will note, I think Jeffrey Wilson Jr. can't come back until week 7 because he's on, or week 8 because he was on PUP. I can't remember if that's 6 games or 6 weeks. Either way, I think Mitchell's still the lead guy here. What's your thoughts on him?
I like him. I like the role. I would like it. I think I was going to say I'm going to like it better with Trey Lance because of the rushing potential, but efficiency-wise, they might be better with Garoppolo, and Garoppolo was trying to practice Friday, so he was probably close. So I think either way, Mitchell is on the radar as a value back because I don't think his salary is going to be high come week 7. Yep. I'm assuming they're on the main slate just statistically. So I'm cool with that. I like the workload. I like the offense overall, and kind of has 2 paths to production. Garoppolo a little bit more efficient with the passing, but also Lance opening things up, and then without Kittle, potentially more red zone work for him.
Yeah, I think that Mitchell's pretty good. I'm into him. Do you want to see the salary? Do you want to see stuff like that? But broadly interested in him when he comes back in the main slate. Zach Moss got a role change. The Bills didn't run many plays because they were like scoring in like 5 seconds every play. Moss played 72% of the snaps. That was his first time above 57%. He had 11 carries and 4 targets, turned that into 92 yards. They're kind of similar to the Chiefs where they don't really use their backs in the red zone because Josh Allen gets a lot of red zone rushes, but I still feel like this is a key shift here to get Moss more involved. So what are your thoughts on him right now?
I liked him enough to play him on the single game slate last night. I'll put it this way. I want to play Devin Singletary. I would and did play Moss. I feel better with that. bring up a good point with Allen. He had 3 red zone carries to 1 for Moss. That's not what you want to see for a running
It's also
back.
not new.
Right, and it's also not new. You want running backs who can put up 6 points on a carry with a touchdown. I'm not saying he's never going to score a touchdown, but
I mean, that's all he did the first couple weeks. That's how he was like scoring, was like by getting in the red zone. It wasn't on like amazing usage. It was just like he was playing well.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's going to take the right type of slate, like a large slate, to want to play Moss.
Yeah, I think that he's at least on our radar now, which he was not for a full slate previously. So, I think that I'm open to it. I think I like the talent. I think I like the way he's looked, and I think that does help. So I'm interested. Same team, Dawson Knox keeps solidifying his role. He had 3 deep targets on Sunday. He had 1 the entire year before that. It helps when Daniel Sorensen decides not to cover you. Like, that does help lead to a deep target, but he also had another red zone target. He's actually at 21% there for the full season. So they're not on the main slate again next week, but like, I feel like we should just stop ignoring Dawson Knox and be like, okay, maybe it's not as fluky as it seemed initially.
Yeah, it's so tough because like, you don't want to buy into those sort of wide open plays that are kind of busted, but it's very clear that they want to get him the ball both in the red zone and, down the field. He's got 3 deep targets last night with the red zone target. 92% of the routes, you don't really get that at tight end, so it's time to play Dawson Knox. Also, we need a we got to throw someone under the bus. Call him Dawson Mox, someone who like looks good but is kind of fraudulent.
Yes. I think that the comp for Knox is 2020 Robert Tonyan, where the usage overall is not great, but he's in a tremendous offense and he's converting. And I think that matters. And we used Tonyan a decent amount last year. So not 2021 Robert Tonyan, to my demise, or to my dismay, but also to my demise, that actually was accurate as well. But 2020 Robert Tonyan, I think that's a good comp for Dawson Knox. Let's move now into situations to monitor here. Some things you're keeping your eye on. You're starting off with Trey Lance. What do you see there?
15 for 29, no touchdowns. Negative 0.12 passing net expected points per drop back. Obviously, by the negative, not very good, but league average is about a positive 0.12 or 0.13. Did have a 10.5 yard ADOT. Team high 16 carries for 89 yards, which is the reason that you want to play Trey Lance in fantasy anyway. Mm-hmm. The bigger thing, though, is if the passing could be a problem, then the pass catchers get knocked down, and that includes the biggest point of contention for us, Deebo Samuel this year.
Got 3 deep targets again. 2 consecutive games. He had 3 deep targets all of last year. He's a different player. Just saying.
Answer me this. Do you feel more or less confident in Deebo with Trey Lance?
Oh, less confident. That was not the question, though.
Okay.
The question was, can Deebo get deep targets? And the answer is yes.
That's the question you asked and answered yourself.
Yeah, well, whatever. I will say, in seriousness, the thing I like about Deebo is there are multiple routes to paying off. He can get some deep targets. He can get yards after the catch. He can get red zone rush attempts and score on them, as we saw. Yeah. I like guys who can bail me out multiple ways, and he can do that. Yes. One other note here is that with Kittle on IR, Ross Dwelly played a lot, 25 routes on 31 dropbacks, just 2 targets. But I would say, like, if we get Garoppolo in week 7, Dwelly will be on the menu for tight end, especially because he didn't do much. So it's not like his salaries will be huge.
He was on the menu for me this week.
That's true. Yeah, which was fine. I think that was not a bad play. Talking about Lance overall, I think you have some numbers on their pace. We can just put those in here since we're talking about Lance. It seemed like because they were so run heavy, they kind of killed clock, and that really evaporated a lot of the Cardinals stuff too.
Yeah, I had them when their pre-snap win probability was between 20 and 80%. They ranked 29th this week in pace and 30th in pass rate, keeping in mind that 2 teams haven't played, so it's out of 30 teams. So super slow, super run heavy. That's not ideal for DFS, and just not a whole lot of like my data source, NFL Faster, has no huddle plays, which is surprising. But, again, something to keep an eye on there.
I think that although Lance's role was good for fantasy, it kind of sucks the life out of everyone else in the game if they're going to be play that way, which is a bummer. So that would be a downgrade. You had some stuff on the other side of that game as well with DeAndre Hopkins being back.
Yeah, Hopkins led the Cardinals in targets, which shouldn't be news, but somehow feels like it is. His target share is now 22%, which, again, is like newsworthy in a positive sense, which is kind of crazy. 17% for AJ Green and Chase Edmonds, 15% for Rondale Moore and Christian Kirk. Moore got in for more 3 receiver sets at the expense of Christian Kirk. With Max Williams hurt, they might use 4 receivers more often. So perhaps, I think that it's safe to say DeAndre Hopkins remains and still is the top option here, worth the salary. Aside from that, trying to filter between the other options, I would go with Rondale Moore first, and he was initially last for me. So what are you seeing here?
Could not agree more. I agree with every point you just said. This is the opposite of the Debo thing. I agree with everything you said. I think that Hopkins, he was still the top stacking guy for me because it was kind of like I expect his role to expand. I just didn't feel good about it. Yeah. I'm not going to say he's back to what he was, but I feel better about putting him first now. And given the potential for, like, if Rondale Moore has this role where he runs the route on 54, 55% of dropbacks, he can do stuff on that. There is always a potential that he could go back down. So he's not like someone I'm like super eager to get to in non-game stacks, but I think for game stacks, he's number 2 for me. Name that salary for Rondale Moore in a really, 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 really fun game against Cleveland next week.
Considering that a precursory look at the slate doesn't look like there are a lot of really fun games.
There aren't. You're right.
So like that's still a really limited workload. We don't know if it's going to stick. I'd have to cap it at 6,000.
57. I think that I don't even know if I would have gone 6,000, but I think 57 works.
I figured upper 5s was where he's going to be. I wanted to make sure that if he was 62, that I wouldn't be like, that would be a bit high for me.
One thing to note, Rondale Moore, his big college game outside the one where he torched Northwestern, was against Ohio State, going back to the Buckeye State. I don't know. It's a little narrative here. Back to Big Ten land. Let's go Rondale. I think that I feel better about stacking Kyler now than I did. And I think Kyler is going to nuke some S word on some poop on Sunday. I'm really excited to use Kyler this week. It's going to be great. Mike Williams, another guy you had a note on. What else are you noting besides the Cardinals here? What other notes did you have?
Yeah, I wanted to look at Mike Williams versus Keenan Allen because you and I both liked Allen this week. Not to say we didn't like Mike Williams, but we were just bigger on Allen at the salary difference. But Keenan Allen still leads the team with the 27% target share. Williams is at 26%. You love to see that, those high target shares. It's like the Seahawks, but with Justin Herbert and
less cowardly from the coaching staff.
Yeah. That works out to 13.3 weighted targets per game for Williams and 13.2 for Keenan. It probably feels like all of the leverage belongs to Mike Williams, and he has it for sure. I'm not down. This isn't an anti-Mike Williams thing. It's Keenan's like really close workload wise, even though it doesn't feel like it. He's underperforming. Mike Williams very, very much overperforming. So I don't want to forget about Keenan Allen. I want to make sure that I still play Mike Williams because it's not just fluky. The role is awesome. Yep. Also, do you have thought?
Nope.
Okay. Darrell Henderson got banged up, came back in, but Sony Michel did close out that game. Henderson ended up playing 66% of the snaps on Thursday. Michel played 34%. Not going to overreact, but with Henderson, playing like 89+% of snaps in his healthy games, I guess he has 2 now, but about 66% in the games where he has been injured. Something I want to monitor. It's going to be hard to monitor. I kind of still project he plays about 80% next week. Antonio Gibson's red zone role is always something that we're watching. He had 6 red zone carries after losing that race 3-1 last week to J.D. McKissick. Odell Beckham might be toast. that game was awesome, and he did virtually nothing. He led the Browns with routes, 28, but had 3 targets, which is not good. 20 yards, 2 catches, and a costly drop on a 4th down. David Njoku was maybe we need to talk about Njoku. Name a salary for Njoku for next week.
He's still like 49 to me.
Okay.
I know that's lower than what he'll be if I had to guess. He'll probably be like 6,000 given tight end.
51, so that's very much.
Oh, okay. Well, I can include him in game stacks then because I think he's past Hooper based on that usage, and Njoku got good usage in week 1 as well. That I think he got banged up a little bit. So I think he's the number 1 guy there, and I think that 51 I can include in game stacks. You know,
for sure.
So I want to talk about Beckham now because I'm going to talk myself into him by Sunday, and I don't like.
Me too.
I know that, but I want to talk to him while the wound is fresh. I didn't really use him a whole lot this week, but like I wanted to. And
so I didn't, and I think I didn't because I didn't like that game, but I also just didn't like this offense enough. So I talked myself into him as the only viable option. If that
I thought that Chubb was kind of the only guy I really wanted. But like I'm going to talk myself into him because I know that he's out there and like I know they can connect. But like it's just weird vibes. It's just weird. Like that's the only way I can describe it is weird. Like maybe this is the pitch you can use. Is okay, Baker was bad 2 weeks ago. And then this week it's a Brandon Staley defense where they want to take away your over the top stuff. They want to limit your top guy. They did that. Like you can talk yourself into it, but I don't think you can go hard at Odell. I did go really hard at Odell in that Vikings game. I can't go hard at him. I don't think ever again until they start to click.
So name a salary for Odell Beckham, who is 16th in air yards share among all receivers in a game we're going to want to stack next week.
62.
6,000.
That's low enough where I'll use him, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay, your final note was on the Jags receivers without DJ Chark. Jamal Agnew. Hello, I guess.
Yeah. 24 routes for Agnew, 8 targets to tie for a team high with Dan Arnold, who had 8. Also ran 27 routes. So those 2 guys trailed only Marvin Jones with 31 routes himself. But Marv had just 1 catch on his 5 targets. Laviska Shenault, 22 routes, so 4th on the team, just 3 targets, caught 1 for 58, which was kind of just a catch and run. And Tavon Austin had 16 routes himself.
I had no idea Tavon Austin was on the Jags.
Oh yeah, he kind of came in.
It's the most obvious pairing of all time, having Tavon Austin with Urban Meyer, but I didn't know.
Yeah, on Thursday night when Chark got hurt, they were throwing to Tavon Austin a bit, if memory serves. But you would think the 5 for 54 would belong to Shenault. Like that's
they used him in that role. Well, they used Agnew in the slot and pushed Viska outside. That's why Tavon and Agnew had more like the Viska type stat line.
So like I don't know. There were talks that.
Sorry, my dog's being mischievous.
What are you doing? I could tell.
She was like eating my backdrop. So I was like trying to like, what's going on? She's grumpy. She's pouting because I wouldn't let her eat the backdrop.
The reason that this I think is relevant is that I have been targeting some Marvin Jones for bringbacks. I had been targeting this week Shenault for some bringbacks. It's honestly, it's less to do with, we want to play Trevor Lawrence and build around this team, but it's more our Jaguars game's viable for bringbacks, and this was not overly promising. And I'm not going to play Jamal Agnew and like a main slate. So
yeah, they're in London next week, thankfully.
Yeah.
Tua is back next week, at least that's good. I feel like Marv is still 1, but I don't feel good about anyone here. Is that what about like James Robinson? He got a lot of yardage, but his role was still kind of underwhelming. He had 20 adjusted opportunities, turned that into 149 yards. Like that seems kind of fluky, right?
Yeah. Also, Hyde was, I think, getting some. Yeah, he got 4 red zone carries.
Yeah, he
Robinson had
had
Robinson had
22%
5.
of the red zone chances, and Robinson had 28%.
I mean, that's enough where it's worrisome. So
It's annoying. Yeah, just a weird team. There's not a good DFS team. Not a good team. Things I'm keeping an eye on. Kyle Pitts finally got a good role. Might have been heavily influenced by Calvin Ridley being out, but like when you play well, you assume that will stick even when he's back. Pitts had 10 targets, 119 yards. One of those targets is deep. So I want to ask you, are you expecting this role to stick after the bye, or does it get washed out with Ridley being back?
I think it has to stick to some degree. His role hasn't been as bad as
No.
perception. Like his weighted target numbers were still fine. It's just that he hadn't scored. This really helped. There's a bye. He's still a rookie. He's playing tight end.
Yeah.
Like I think the arrow's up on Kyle Pitts for me. Not saying he's back into like the top 5 where he was kind of placed before the season,
He might be just by
but
because like Kittle's gone.
he might be by default. Well,
Yeah.
then if Kittle's out, like it's a big 4. Like just trying to be realistic.
Who are the 4?
Well, it was a big 5 with Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, Andrews, and Pitts to start the season.
Oh, yeah. Andrews hasn't been on the main slate in like a decade, so I kind of forgot that he existed. He's back next week at least, so that's good. Yeah, I think that Pitts is up there. He's definitely in that tier. He's not in the Kelsey or the Waller tier, but he's in that next tier.
Okay.
I think. Leonard Fournette, much better role this week than he'd had previously when Giovanni Bernard has been active. When the starters left that game, Fournette was at 72% of the snaps, finished 63%. I think that kind of undersells what he was doing. 110 yards from scrimmage. He got work in the passing game. I was off Lenny once Gio was active, but I am probably going to be back in now. They're not in the main slate next week, but I think my sentiment on Gio is shifting, on Fournette is changing, where I'm like, okay, maybe this is actually a thing I can bank on. What about you?
Yeah, we don't have an abundance of running backs playing a majority of snaps in good offenses with good red zone roles. Like, does Fournette have a path to 30? No, not to me. Does he have a path to 20?
He had 30
Absolutely.
last week.
Did he?
Oh, sorry, 30 adjusted opportunities. I was thinking those, not points. Sorry.
I was like, that
My
doesn't.
bad.
Okay. But yeah, like that absolutely is viable, especially with, I would assume McCaffrey's back.
Yeah.
For next week.
Yeah.
Dalv probably back, but like if we don't have those guys, oh no, the big dog's not on the main slate. So I know Fournette isn't either, but
I'll live. No, I used him a lot this week. I was very happy with him, but he scares me every time. Like I think I was at 38% this week, and I was like, that seems low. I was really worried about it. I have less stress when he's not in the slate, whether I use him or not. So that's nice.
Yeah, Fournette I like.
Yeah, we're on board. Other role change or situation to monitor here is the Patriots backfield. Damian Harris allegedly was hurt, but also might have gotten benched after a fumble against Houston. Ramondre Stevenson got a lot of run. He tied Harris in snaps. Stevenson ran just 5 routes, though, whereas Brandon Bolden was still the pass-catching guy. If anything, Stevenson might take over the Harris role, but we weren't using that in DFS to begin with. So the Patriots remain unusable in DFS. Let's talk about philosophical changes from week number 5. I thought the most impactful one was the Saints because they actually threw the ball, which was weird. They had a 65% pass rate in early downs in the first half this week. That was at 42% across the first 4 weeks, and it helped lead to 8 targets for Alvin Kamara. That might not stick, but that would be a huge development for Kamara's ceiling to once again get targets in this offense. Now, they're on bye, so it doesn't matter for week 6, but I think it's not going to make him go back to his old role where I'm like, oh, yeah, just plug him in no matter what. But my willingness to use him went up. What about for you?
Yeah, that has to be a good sign for sure. Kamara is someone that I've just been struggling with this year. I think a lot of people have. You know, you, me, and JJ Zachariason do a snake draft each week on Fridays, and I'm like, I don't really want to pick Kamara, but the role is good enough. But then when it comes to salary cap format, I'm a little bit less inclined to get there. think this is a promising development for Kamara.
Who won the snake draft this week?
You.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, because of Devontae?
Yeah, because I went Saquon over Devontae at number 2.
I mean, I would have probably done that. Actually, no, I had Devontae 1.02, but it was
I
really
had
close.
I had him second too.
It
But
was
I was
close.
like, well,
Yeah,
if I go Barkley, then I have
you
more
could have gone either
routes
way.
to the
Both were
stack.
defensible. Don't beat yourself up. You were fine. The Bears remained pretty run heavy with Justin Fields in his second start under Bill Lazor calling plays. Early down first half pass rate was 44%. They likely are going to stick with that until they get a reason to change. The good thing is they get Green Bay next week, so they might not be able to run as much. So vibes for you around the Bears pass catchers, given how run-centric they've been, but also how, like, Justin Fields hasn't looked bad as a passer.
Down.
Yeah.
Like you really can't talk yourself into too many pass catchers on a team that actively wants to run the ball when they can. You can't really assume negative game script and forcing them into passing. It just doesn't quite work that way for me. Because, for the most part, games aren't, I don't know what that spread is there.
4.5.
4.5. So like they're probably going to be able to run the ball. And even honestly, whenever it's a 10-point spread, that comes more into play in like the second half. Teams aren't up, 14-0, 3 minutes into the game. So we just know that the Chicago is telling us their first quarter numbers we're running the ball.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's problematic.
They're illustrating their intent, and their intent is to not throw the ball. I think that will shift as they get Fields more comfortable, but it's not going to be yet. I think I kind of want to see it before I expect it to happen. I think Mooney's the top guy here. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
unfortunately. I mean, not against Mooney, but
we like Allen Robinson. Yeah, for sure. But Mooney's number 1 for right now. He's 56 next week. I think that, at times you can get there because he's got a quarterback who's throwing the ball decently well right now. He's getting downfield targets. You can justify that, but not a priority by any means. Okay, let's go to our salary scroll for week number 6. Again, this is a new segment for us where we just go through position by position, check out salaries for week 6, see what stands out to us. I'll let you start at quarterback. You want to start there and see what you see?
Yeah. One thing that jumps out is Mahomes is 9,000 and nobody else is above 84. So
we're going to want Mahomes only 84.
Well, we're going to want Mahomes. So it's going to be am I going to go too hard at Kyler and not have any Mahomes, which feels scary? Lamar's 82.
It's pretty fun. That's a good game too.
That's a fun one. I mean, all these feel kind of appropriate to me otherwise.
I feel like the
Baker at 68.
No. I think the fall off occurs after Herbert at 8,000. Because it's Herbert, Dak, Lamar, Kyler, and Mahomes are the guys at $8,000 or higher. And I feel like I'm going to want to live in that range.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the only other quarterbacks above 75 are Rodgers at 77 and Stafford at 79.
Yeah.
I could see Stafford, but yeah, I think it might be a week where it's the top 5 QBs.
I could see Stafford if it were Daniel Jones playing. With Mike Glennon, it's a tougher sell. Running back Christian McCaffrey is 10,000. I think that's appropriate because he got in a full week of limited practices. He's going to come back, I think, to a pretty, especially because they lost. They've lost 2 in a row now. I think they're going to hammer that guy in. So I'm going to feel good about McCaffrey and want to get there for him. Dalvin's 88. Kind of want to see what his practice looks like, but if he starts to get full practices, that could be interesting. Scrolling down here, looking for some guys who, oh gosh, Jonathan Taylor's on the slate. That's annoying.
They put Alexander Madison at 77, so we're not going to get a late scratch value anyway.
Darrell Henderson 73. Don't think that's bad. He has had at least 14 FanDuel points in every game. He is not top 16, but he has the building blocks to top that. Even with Michelle getting more work this past week, I think Henderson at 73 is one that I'd flag as being interesting, as with Mixon at 7,000, depending on what his practice looks like this upcoming week.
So how do you rate DeAndre Swift compared to those two guys? Because he's right in between them. Am I too high on
Um,
Swift?
you're higher than me. I know that.
Okay, because they'll just throw him the ball in space.
Yeah.
And it's like what a great idea to do.
I just like I just don't like the offense. And like I
Sure,
like the Rams.
but you love the Falcons.
No, I love Cordarrelle Patterson.
Okay.
Um,
Jacobs 68.
yeah. Antonio Gibson 67. I worry about that shin thing because like apparently his leg is actually broken and they just don't care, which is wild. But in a game that I'll stack, I could see getting to Gibson at 67, especially given the red zone role you mentioned. That's kind of interesting.
Where are we with James Conner? Just kind of, I
I
know
would
we historically
rather
don't
get
want
hit by a truck.
to.
I know that's my go-to, but it's true.
Just like at a certain, I mean,
He's Frank Gore.
he's got five, so he's got 2-2-1 rushing touchdowns the past 3 weeks, 17.8, 19.6, and 10.
He scored a touchdown this past week and scored 10.2 points.
Wow.
That's the worst role. He scored 2 last week and didn't get to 20 points. He scored 2 the last
I just
2
said
weeks.
that. I just said those numbers.
But like, oh my gosh, it's
that's wild.
No,
yeah.
I'd rather get hit by a truck. I'd rather use Chase Edmonds. I know Edmonds will not score a touchdown. I can just put that in like pen, but I don't care. I'd rather use him than Connor.
And then
Booker at 59, I think might be low enough where I have to consider him despite the offense. Means I'm investing in Mike Glennon, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Curious what Latavius Murray's role will be Monday night because he is $5,800.
Yeah, that kind of jumped out to me, but I didn't want to speculate too much. But there's nothing preventing me from speculating. So
AJ Dillon's 54. I'm not gonna use him, but like that's actually not totally off the radar at least.
No, it's not.
And then the other one,
Darrell Williams at 52.
Is Darrell Williams. So I think the guys we're flagging in terms of like check him out this week. Darrell Williams, potentially Latavius, depending on what we see on Monday night. Devontae Booker. I would say those are the primary value guys to keep an eye on. Maybe Gibson at 67. Kind of dig into his role and see what you see there. You ready to move to wide receiver?
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you start.
All right. Mike Williams up to 8,000 seems fair. Tyreek at 87 is going to be a nightmare, just in the sense of it's worth it.
Yeah. Really good game,
especially coming off of a just a fine game at 11.3 FanDuel points. So I want to make sure I'm prioritizing that. Nuke's up to 77, or DeAndre Hopkins, I should probably specify. Feels
Amari
fair.
Cooper is 68.
CeeDee Lamb's only 7,000.
I don't like that game because I don't like the opposing quarterback against New England, but that's tempting.
It's kind of a pretty clear drop right
There's
after.
no one in the 6,000 range.
Yeah. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Right around 6,000 is interesting. You got Kadarius Toney, Odell. Michael Pittman's 58 against Houston. That spread's probably going to scare me off, but like his role is good.
Yeah. Rondale Moore, 57.
Henry Ruggs is 55. Only 3 targets this past week, but he's had 50 yards in 4 straight games. You know.
Yeah.
It's not nothing, at least. Would you rather...
Chris Conley, 52?
No. Let me think of this. Would you rather... I don't want to get hit by busting again. Would you rather have to play MLB DFS every day for the rest of your life, or use Robbie Anderson in cash?
I'm gonna take the MLB, dog.
Okay, good for you. Proud of you. Mecole Hardman's $5,500. He had 12 targets this past week. Season high 76 yards. I don't know if the yardage will stick, but I like that game. And I haven't really used Hardman a lot this year. I did use him last night in single game, but like I might be there at $5,500 in that game.
Yeah, I jotted him down. Amon-Ra St. Brown has had 8 targets back-to-back weeks. Quintez Cephas just got hurt. Hey, come Sunday when we're looking for that guy in the low fives who can just make a lineup work.
I'm not going to use a Lions guy.
65 and 70 yards. Isn't your cutoff like 85 or a touchdown?
Yeah, so 85 or 2 touchdowns. Yeah,
So
you're right. No, you're right. You're right. You're right. You can be right. That's fine.
Okay.
I can see the point, but I don't want to. I don't think the yardage upside is really there. Like 85 might be pushing it. I know he's gotten close, but I think it might be pushing it still.
I mean, it's possible, but
yeah. Okay. Tight end, good.
Yeah.
Waller's 7,000. They're facing Denver. Just kidding. I don't want that. Change my mind.
I'm like over Darren Waller.
I used him yesterday.
I'm over him to the point where I'm like, and I did this same thing last year. I'm like, he's not on the same planet as Travis Kelce. Not going to play him. Then he drops 30.
Yep. Mark Andrews is $6,300. He's had a good role recently. I know we had talked about how it was concerning, but it's actually been pretty good recently. Not totally off that for Mark Andrews.
Yikes, this is a mess. Njoku 51.
Okay.
And Ricky Seals-Jones 5,000.
Jared Cook's role went down this past week, but it didn't lead to an increase for Donald Parham. I know Parham like keeps scoring, but like he's still running like 8 routes per game. So it's more so like I'm downgrading Cook without upgrading anyone. Tyler Higbee, I'm gonna do it again. It's like
so
I
was talking about Kupp getting downgraded. I feel like Robert Woods being more involved hurts Higbee more. Like way more.
Higbee hasn't had enough to get hurt anyway. Like you can't downgrade from a bad role. I just keep using him because he's on the field all the time for a good offense. Like it's not a good process-based play, but like, I'm not good with my process. So
this is such a niche comment, but he looks like Kyle Berkshire, who's the world long drive champion.
Who is Kyle? Okay. Higbee does?
Yeah, with the long hair.
Dude should cut his hair. Like Robert Tonyan has long hair, but he makes it look good, at least. Tyler Conklin's got the man bun. That's kind of cool. Kind of makes him look like that guy from Game of Thrones, whose name I can't remember right now. Jason Momoa. Like, there's that. Njoku and Ricky Seals-Jones, I feel like, are the two guys I like from a salary perspective. Also, Mo Alley Cox, depending on his route rate on Monday, could be interesting.
Yeah, those are the 3 I jotted down.
Okay, cool. Tommy Tremble's not there yet. I'm going to keep on monitoring his role, but he's not there yet. He's at $4,800. I need to see more, but I'm going to keep an eye on his route rate, but it's not there yet. So just noting that because we didn't talk about him earlier on. Okay. Any final notes for you?
No, I think that covers it. Okay. Some good running back options at the top. Potential value. I like how this is setting up for next week.
Okay, let's finish up with a note to future me. What are you making sure you don't forget heading into week 6?
That's a tough one.
I can start then. Don't overthink defenses and I don't mean like defense and special teams. I mean like don't get scared off of a game that looks fun because defenses have played well with the Browns and Chargers this past week. So specifically, I think Chargers and Ravens next week. Don't overthink that one. They're 2 fun offenses. We know where the ball is going. I mean, depending on if Rashad Bateman's able to play for that game, like we kind of know where the ball is going. Don't overthink it and get scared off because defenses are good there. That's my key thing.
For me, it's probably take the value available at tight end and most likely running back, even for guys like Gibson and Swift kind of coming out as values to build around those 5 stud quarterbacks.
I also need to have a self-exclude on Odell Beckham. I'm going to need to talk to someone like, oh, you're trying to use Odell Beckham. You've been logged out. And I have 2-factor authentication, so I have to log back in and stuff like that. And it's very annoying. So if I annoy myself enough, I won't use him. So that's the goal, is just don't do too much with Odell Beckham. That is all that we have here for week number 5. Brandon, any final thoughts for you before we send off the good people to Monday Night Football?
Just trust the data. Don't chase the points.
Okay. That will work very well. I agree. And hopefully things look better for the slate as we get closer to Thursday. We'll be back here once again on Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page to get you set for week number 6. Make sure you're subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page, but also make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts, we have PGA coming up this week, UFC, NASCAR still going, a lot of good stuff. So make sure you're subscribed and check out those podcasts, and also leave a rating and review if you are so inclined. Brandon, people have questions for you on Twitter. Where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your Monday night single game slates. We'll talk to you once again on Thursday to get you set for week number 6. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.